All right, popping out chat. Saying hello. Well, thank you everyone for joining us again for another episode of SEO Fight Club. Today we have our third fundamentals episode in a row, and then after that we'll go back to some theoretical and more advanced SEO concepts. Well, after episode 100, because of course this is 88. What comes after episode 88? Episode 100, because we are backfilling a few missing episodes, and the next episode after today will be officially our 100th episode. So still not sure what we're going to do. I'll talk to the guys. We'll figure out something. But if anything, I'll at least want to briefly discuss our favorite episodes from the 100. Because I think that'd be fun. The ones to tell people to go back and check out because they really don't want to miss them. But we'll probably do something else. Maybe we'll do an ask us anything type of thing. So bring questions. That would probably be a lot of fun. So I'm leaning that way in addition. But today we're talking about SEO and content. And I think a lot of SEOs get themselves into a great deal of trouble because they don't set the correct boundaries with what their role is involving the content. And when you leave that wishy-washy and you take on too much, you tend to shoot yourself in the foot. And we're going to talk about that. But first, Clint, what was on SEO this week?
Oh, it was a spectacular episode. I just don't remember what I talked about. Actually, we did some news. I ranted a couple times, which know me, I tend to do. And then finally showed off Rank Gear, the schema tool. Got in there, got in the back end, showed how it works, etc. And people are signing up and using it. So pretty excited about that.
Nice. Are you gonna come on our show in a coming week here and show our audience?
We are actually got a Skype group for it now. The guys that are paying, they're giving us some great ideas and tips. Like templates are coming, drop and drag, they're coming. Being able to save is coming. Exporting is already there. And once those are all in, we'll come over to the ING folks once our game is up to standard and show off a little bit.
Nice. Very cool. Maybe we can work out some kind of a big promotional launch.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be awesome.
Cool. We'll talk more. And if you don't know about SEO this week, it's a YouTube show. He does news. He does how-tos and tutorials. He interviews people. He's really hands-on and tactical. So if you want that kind of SEO show, you can check out SEO This Week on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search for SEO This Week. It'll be the #1 result. Another show we promote is the SEO Video Show. It's an interview show where prominent SEOs talk about how they did it and how they continue to do it and how it was done back in the day. So if you like finding out all those stories, check out the SEO Video Show. Also on YouTube, just go there, search for SEO Video Show. And Lauren, are you here? Can you let us know what's going on in the IMG world?
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Tomorrow we have the SEO Mastermind Test Review. So if you don't have that on your calendar, book your calendar for 5:30 p.m. PST. And then we have our regular AMA coming up and our pro tip. But what I'm most excited about is on the 1st of March, we are dropping Leo's Keyword Genesis, keyword research course. And so we're really excited to see that go live in the platform.
Wow, keyword research really is a 4-letter word in our industry. People get pretty passionate about doing it right, and everybody thinks they have the best system. What do you think, Clint? Is that a volatile topic?
Is this going to be Leo from Keyword Cupid?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. That guy is stupid smart. If you don't know, Keyword Cupid is probably one of the first tools out there that did keyword clustering. Everyone else talking about it. Those guys, he actually did something about it and created a tool for everyone to use. And I've been using it since beta. And I've talked to Leo one-on-one quite extensively, and his ideas about keyword research and how to use it are amazing, in my opinion. And it does cause you to actually rethink your process a little bit and be a whole lot smarter. And then by being smarter, it's a whole lot easier. So I would, if anything, check out Leo on Facebook. Go get his sign up for IMG to check out the course, or just go find Keyword Cupid and use that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in the course, he actually goes into Snapchat to look at your audiences and what they're interested in and all kinds of cool ideas, stuff like that. It doesn't matter. I think it's accessible to beginners, but for advanced users, I think they're going to get a lot of really exciting ideas as well.
Very cool. Well, thank you for that, Lauren. So right on to our topic, SEO and content. So first, I want to talk about like the 5 roles that I think SEOs kind of get tangled up in, and they don't necessarily put up boundaries when they should. And I know that oftentimes SEOs are put in the position of having to hold many roles. And this tends to be very true with small business SEO and is much less true with like enterprise scale SEO. So there's the business role, which that role needs to understand the customers and how to satisfy visitors' needs in order to convert them into customers. That's kind of, knowing your business. The website has a role in all of this too, and that's to present information and to meet the visitor's needs in terms of presentation and functionality and to facilitate conversions. So it's kind of a delivery and enabling role, and it tends to be filled just by the software that you're running, your web server and your web application. But obviously, there are inputs into that development that come from other stakeholders. And then there's the subject matter expert role. And if you've ever done, software consulting, you're probably familiar with the SME, the subject matter expert, because they're usually on the planning team. But this is the person who understands the information you're going to use best. So if you are going to create software for construction companies, your subject matter expert probably is very familiar with construction companies and knows exactly what they need and how they operate. And so these are the people that know the information that you need to share. And then there's a content creator role. And oftentimes the people who run the business, the people who develop the website, and even the subject matter experts, they often suck at communication. They don't know how to write effectively. They make things too complicated for the audience. And so oftentimes you get content writers or video creators who are really good at explaining the information to general audiences. And that's the content creator role. And developers and business people, whoever heard they communicate poorly. But they do. And I know this because I communicate poorly and I'm an engineer, and I hear it from Clint all the time. Ted, it's too technical, I don't understand a damn thing you say. And that's why you need good writers and good content creators to come in and communicate what you're trying to get across effectively. And then finally, there's the SEO role. And this is to make the website content perform its best in search engines. Period. That's what SEOs do. And so we have these 5 roles, and oftentimes I see SEOs getting mixed up in these various roles. Like they try to operate within them, sometimes with, sometimes without permission of the business and the other people performing these functions. And so there's room to step on each other's toes. There's room to bite off way more than you can chew. There's room to make terrible mistakes. And so it's very important when you're an SEO coming into a business uh, to be mindful of these roles so that you don't overstep. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more. So a lot of this breaks down to SEO versus CRO, which is conversion rate optimization. And I know a lot of the time the CRO people are like, well, CRO is infinitely better than SEO. You should totally, throw away SEO and just do CRO. It's so easy to impress people with CRO. But the truth is, SEO is an input into conversion rate optimization. If you don't know what conversion rate optimization is, it's the notion that you kind of A/B test everything that customers come in contact with, and you figure out what converts best every step of the way. This text or that text, this checkout funnel or that checkout funnel, this color button or that color button. They just test it all and keep ratcheting up the conversion rate. But ultimately, that's tuning your funnel for conversion, but that funnel needs an input. It needs traffic to flow through. And SEO is going to deliver organic traffic into that funnel that you can then optimize for conversion. So SEO is technically an input for CRO. And so when you're an SEO and you dabble in these other areas, you're kind of stepping away from SEO in some regards and stepping into CRO, which isn't always bad, but it's sometimes in addition to the SEO you need to do. So if you start to drift into CRO territory, you're kind of taking on an extra job in theory. Any questions so far or any thoughts on that so far? None yet? Okay. So a lot of times what I see is that SEOs will take on more than the SEO role. And for a small business, like I mentioned before, SEOs often have to wear multiple hats because they show up and the business is a tiny business. It has 5 pages. It's just a father and son plumber, and they don't know anything about the web. And you're the expert on all these things, for the technical side of stuff. And so oftentimes when you're doing the small business SEO, you're probably going to fill in all those roles. As the business gets larger, this generally becomes less feasible because oftentimes you will have subject matter experts that know a technical amount of information. Say, for example, your website that you're doing is health information or legal information. Unless you're the doctor, unless you're the lawyer, you can't be the subject matter expert on that content. So there's going to be someone else who's going to assemble the information. And then again, if you're just an SEO and you're not an awesome content creator, if you're not good at translating technical information into consumable content for general audiences, and you probably don't want to be in the role of rewriting content so that it's consumable, especially if you don't have that skill set. And at a certain point, it becomes a terrible mistake to try. And like one example because I know Kyle and Clint are expert SEOs. So if anybody can pull this off, it's them, because they've had lots of clients, and I'm setting them up with a ringer, so don't feel bad when I do it. But guys, you get an e-com client, and it's kind of straightforward e-commerce client. And it turns out they sell wall calendars, those paper calendars with half naked firemen that tell you what day, President's Day is. And you got the calendars, you're doing the SEO for these calendars on the website, and you are going to fulfill all those roles I just talked about. You're going to take them on all yourself. So, at what point in this year for the 2021 calendars, at what point do you have to put those calendars on a fire sale? Because at a certain date this year, those calendars are no longer worth the paper they're printed on. When do you fire sale, and when are those calendars dead?
And you got to figure, don't most calendars for the next year get sold the previous year?
No, they actually sell into the year.
At what point do they become vintage and a collector's item?
They don't. They never do. If you don't sell them by a certain time in the year, they end up in a dumpster.
And I can't imagine getting through Q1 then, like beginning of Q2 fire sale.
Well, the thing is, that's only one product in one category. If that online retailer has 500 categories and 25,000 products, you can't be the subject matter expert for almost any of it. I mean, they're all going to have their own seasonality. They're all going to have their own qualities that people search for. I mean, you can wing it in a lot of cases, but you're probably going to get yourself into serious trouble, especially when things that you wouldn't normally think could spoil can and do. Things like leather products, they will actually spoil too if they're left on the shelf for too long. You have a certain number of years, but if you haven't cleaned out that inventory by, the time where the leather starts to crack, you basically have a problem. And so there's all this understanding about the content on the website and the information that needs to go out and when you need to do it by and how you need to promote it, that SEOs can't do all of it. You have to rely on the people who actually know about the information being presented. And so for ecom as an SEO, I would have to rely on the people at the fulfillment center. What do I need to get cleared off of the shelves in a hurry? The leather that's about to expire, the calendars that won't be worth anything in a month and a half. So it's important to know about those things, but also the product buyers who procure the stuff. But even more than that, like on a job that big, I also can't tweak all of the product descriptions. Like having the SEO go in and update 25,000 pages isn't realistic. So at that point, I end up having to go to the product copy team, which in an organization that big, there's often 5 to 15 people that do nothing but load products into the system, retire old products, assign products to categories, create the copy for them. And what you do is you give guidelines to that team to be able to do the meet the SEO requirements as well as just their regular work. But it's a good example of why it fails for larger businesses and why even in smaller companies it can be hazardous. Because you can really hurt the company if you try to do all the copy for them and you're not an expert in their business. And that brings me to the business whisperer, because I encountered these SEOs when I was in online retail. They always wanted to come and unseat me from my job. And they came in with all the bravado. They're like, I can sell anything better than everyone. I can write better than everyone. I can design better than everyone. I can develop. I can research information about your products, and I'm going to do it all. And it's like, no, you're not. You fundamentally don't understand your relationship with this content. Like, they can't, just like you guys couldn't know when to sell those calendars by, the SEO that was trying to unseat me, he didn't know. He had no clue. He had no idea that the Christmas ornaments would go on a big sale on December 25th. He had no idea when to start selling lawn furniture. He had no idea. All these things have different seasonality. And it's remarkable how many SEOs think that they can just come in and do it better than the business without even thinking about it. And a lot of the time they just offend the business, because how often in your professional career have you encountered someone who essentially says, I don't know anything about what you do, but let me tell you how to do it better. That's one of the most offensive things you can do in business. And so it's a trap, and some of the things that I've seen SEOs run into. So like that first one I just mentioned. Another one is your web design isn't good enough. It's not modern enough. Let me start a new web design project for you. That's not SEO. Your information isn't good enough. Let me research on your topic and customer needs and provide better information. Again, that's not SEO. I mean, ideally, that would be coming from the business. You're an SEO, you should be taking the information they have and making it perform its best in search. You shouldn't be doing the research and the content writing to improve the information standards. If the website doesn't communicate as well as it should, if it's too technical for the audience, again, that's another place where I see SEOs coming in and rewriting. And really, you probably want the business to do that, or you want to set up a different contract separate from the SEO to do the additional scoped work of rewriting copy. And it also happens with web development. Modern stores have faceted navigation, so you need faceted navigation to compete. Well, no, you don't, not from an SEO standpoint. And that's just another web development project. So many times people in channel marketing, they get outside of their role. It's not just SEOs, it's the pay-per-click people and the social media marketing, or the guy doing Optimizely CRO on the website. They step outside those various roles and get into places that are, beyond what they're supposed to be working on. And ideally, the business should have all this stuff in order for the SEO. The SEO can alert the business that there's a problem with one of them and they should look into it. But you shouldn't just absorb issues with the content as part of the SEO contract. And that's where I see a lot of people like getting into the weeds, because you end up trying to fix the content instead of ranking the content, and you're being judged on how well you rank the content. So you don't want to spend time fixing something that's not part of your judgment criteria, part of your performance review as to whether or not they keep you. And so if you spend all your time making the content more readable for a less technical audience, that's time you could have spent ranking the page. And that's the trap of not respecting those roles and those boundaries. And then, there's the other problem of pretending to be an expert when you shouldn't and taking it all on yourself. It really does keep your clients small and dissatisfied. And, a key, just a fundamental key to giving good advice is understanding people's limits, your own limits, and the limits of other people. And providing great service is usually done by setting boundaries, saying, I'm going to do this finite scope of work that's very well defined and specified, and I'm going to knock that out of the park. And if stuff pops up that's outside of that scope, I'll let you know, but I'm not going to automatically take it because I need to keep the work I'm doing as quality as it can be. And that's how you provide good service, is you focus on the job you're hired to do. You don't take on every job that falls across your path. And content is one of those areas where a lot of different jobs can fall across your path. And so, finally, I want to give a couple ideas on how you can navigate these boundaries. And so this first one is, I noticed that your visitors have a high bounce rate. They may not be satisfied with the information on the page. We might be targeting the wrong keywords for this information. If you feel that the information is what it should be for the page to convert, can you look at it and let me know what you think? That's a way of keeping the SEO on your plate, but having them look at the information to see if it's the right type of information to get that page to convert. You set up the boundaries where you give that part of the work back to the business for them to evaluate and correct, or they can come back and say, no, you didn't target the right keyword, you didn't understand the information. You set that boundary so that you're doing SEO work and they're doing the other content related pieces. I noticed that your visitors have a high bounce rate. They may have trust issues with the older style web design. We can help you with that, but it's outside of the scope of the SEO, and we would need a separate service agreement for that. Again, you find a problem, you bring it to their attention, but you don't dive into fixing it. You let them know if you can, it requires a new contract. So you can be compensated for it. You can update timelines for it. You can do all that stuff. You don't just go in and fix it. And again, they may fix it. They may have a web guide to fix it, but you put it back on them. And so you stay focused on the SEO. That's the critical part, is that you don't start getting into things that take you off of the SEO and ultimately get you fired when the SEO isn't good enough because you spun your wheels in other aspects of content that you shouldn't have dallied in. So what do you guys think?
Ted, I think that last paragraph kind of gets into, I see this more of scope issues more than anything, because, and I totally agree, by the way, I can't stand when SEOs come in and they're like, we need to change the website. I don't know. That's probably not the issue. But there are people that are, I think, and we're all looking for a way to make a buck, that taking on other roles, and especially in smaller businesses, you can wear more hats and do more things. But I think having very clearly defined roles in terms of, okay, this is the SEO aspect and you're paying this much for this, and then this is the web tech aspect or design aspect and you're paying this much for that. As long as you can keep those things defined, I think you steer clear of some of those problems. But I also agree with you too, like about kind of trying to bring up those problems in a negative way in order to take on that is usually not the best approach.
What do you think, Clint?
I like thinking from a different perspective. And I had this conversation in SEO Signals Lab, and one of the few times that I go in there, and they were asking about content writers and they were complaining that their content writers didn't know what H1 tags are. So where your stance is SEOs thinking that they should be web designers and developers and content writers and getting into that mess, it's the other way around as well, where SEOs expect these other professions, as it were, to be able to do your job. In this case, it was content writers, and they expected the content writers to be able to optimize a piece of content for SEO. And I told them that's kind of the wrong thinking. A content writer's job is to research a piece of content and write the best quality piece of content the user would want. It's the SEO's job to get that optimized after they get it. And I don't know, I got quite a lot of pushback from that. And it seems odd to me why we would expect these other people to be doing the job that we're being paid for. You know what I mean? And on top of that, as we all know, SEOs are cheap asses anyway. So what you end up with is this SEO optimized, and I'm using air quotes because it's not, content that they're getting, and then they complain. They have the nerve to complain they didn't get good content because they essentially hired SEOs who pretend to be content writers, who also are pretending to be SEOs because they got Page Optimizer Pro or Surfer, and now they know how to use entities better than anybody.
Yeah, it's definitely a two-way street, and you're exactly right. And it ends up with subpar solutions. When you have non-expert SEOs, aka content writers, doing your SEO, and you have non-expert content writers, aka SEOs, doing your content writing. It's not going to be the best quality work.
And that's why it's so hard to find good people in either of those. And I'm sure Kyle's gone through just as many people over at High Voltage as I have trying to find writers and SEOs, because you get people who've done a little bit of one, and so now they're experts and they're good at it, but they're really not good at either.
Yeah, and there is room for an all-in-one expert. Like I've seen it from time to time in SEOs that say, "Oh, I only do SEO for law firms. I only do SEO for plumbers. I only do SEO for dentists." Those guys typically have done enough plumbers' websites that they know the subject matter, they know about the competitive content about it, they really know how to talk about it, they know how it's sold, they know how the businesses operate. So if you really focus on one niche, your odds of wearing all those hats at one time greatly improve. But the second you depart from that and you go to some random online retailer, then like all of that goes out the window. Your ability to wear many hats just got nuked. And people aren't necessarily aware of that. But as the business gets bigger, it definitely changes. What do you think, Lee?
Yeah, I think the a lot of times, when having conversations with people, the SEO and the CRO are completely different. The content that converts is not necessarily that which ranks, and having those two as clear silos and roles to look at, I think is very liberating. I think Kyle showed that best with Rhinoplasty Plano. If you can get Laura Mipson to rank, I doubt it converted very well. With respect to Kyle, I don't think it was the best written page for conversion. So, I think that's spot on in terms of your presentation here tonight.
Well, I think Rhinoplasty Plano converted a lot of SEOs over to our way of thinking. It's just a different type of conversion.
The highest level conversion, the thought conversion.
Fine, I take back my comments.
If you can convert beliefs, that's the highest level of conversion.
Yeah, that's, and in SEO, that's almost a religious conversion. But
basically, I'm doing God's work. That's just all I'd like to say.
well, all right, that's a bit much, but it's if you haven't met a lot of SEOs, but I'm assuming you have. If you haven't met a lot of SEOs, they get pretty stuck in their beliefs, and when you start doing SEO testing, you get to hear a lot of the beliefs come out. Clint, when you started testing and you came across people who would challenge the information you were discovering, I mean, how did you like handle that? Because those would be individuals who simply didn't want to believe the evidence, who didn't want to go that way. How do you handle those people?
Well, at first I used to take it personally. You know me, I'm not exactly the coolest headed person in the world, but listening to you, listen to Kyle, and just and being able and engaging more with people, and etc. Now it's, hey, that's a great opinion. Show me your test. Like, prove it to me that you did it. And 9 times out of 10, the response is, "Oh, I did the test and a whole bunch of pages on some things, and I can't show that." Well, it's usually that's a cop out answer, that they didn't actually do the test and they're just running with that opinion that's kind of lore to what they know, right? So in my case, a blogger site, I just ran a whole bunch of tests on that, and I can tell you that the results of the tests were completely opposite of what I thought I was going to get. What my brain said knew was right, what is probably the 99% everyone think is new is right, the test showed it was completely different. And shout out to Josh Brzezinski. The dude hates bloggers, and I thought he was crazy. Well, there's a reason he hates bloggers, and he was actually right. So, the meds were on working that day, I guess. And so, it's, you just got to be willing to accept other people's ideas, no matter how harebrained you think they are or wrong, and then go out and test it. And then when people challenge your tests, tell them to go out and test it and prove their argument. It's not complicated. Hell, Kyle's taught the single variable test. Everyone should know at this point how to do a single variable test. It's that easy to test that one thing. So,
And what's so awesome about that answer you just gave is I think it's all entirely applicable to content as well. If you're not the subject matter expert for what the page is about, you shouldn't pretend to be, you know? And testing is all about getting the right answer, getting the actual facts, getting it done correctly so you can do it right. And same thing with the content. You can't be an expert on everything. You have to know when to ask for help. You got to know when this should have been provided by the business, and you got to know your own service, which most of the time should be, I will help your content perform as best it can organically. It doesn't mean you're going to rewrite all their content, because that's a whole different job.
and if you are providing content, just give it back to the clients and say, before you optimize it, and say, is this right? Is this correct? Is this on point? Is this the message you want to tell with your brand? They are supposed to be the SMEs for that industry anyway, so why not leverage it? And you can stroke their egos a little bit, and they like that too, so they'll keep you around because you make them feel good.
Well, and they trust you. They know that you're gonna set boundaries on where your expertise is and defer when needed. And that's an important thing.
Ted, I think a big takeaway from today has to be you have to define those roles with a new client. Because if they think they're hiring an SEO consultant and you think they're just hiring someone to do SEO, you're going to run into trouble a few months from now. So you have to set up their expectations and your own in their mind. So, and define those roles beforehand, or you'll fall into that trap of going, well, I can write up an article. I'll get one written. I don't know much about, pet cremation, but I'll figure something out and, screw somebody up and screw yourself out of a job.
Yeah, exactly. And usually for an SEO, having to write articles like that is their personal definition of hell. I couldn't imagine just writing articles on random topics in the world. Not that I have anything against those random topics. It's just, that's not what I do. And I'm sure there are people out there that are both SEOs and writers, but it's not all SEOs. And so for those of us who aren't both, you gotta set up the boundaries. Lauren, have you ever encountered this in your experience? I know you've worked with a lot of different organizations. Have you ever encountered this?
Yeah, for the most part, in the organizations that I've worked with, they don't really know what SEO is even. And so some of them think an SEO is a copywriter, some of them think that they do CRO, and it all gets really blurry. So I've found that it's really hard and really important to make those boundaries and set the expectations clearly, because I've found like small fashion brands especially, they have no idea.
Yeah, and it's so true. They often don't know the difference, and
Yeah.
all the more reason why you gotta define things as clearly as you can, and you have to make sure people understand. And if you understand these roles, you can often, create the service agreement in a way where you define in the agreement when you're going to hand things back. If there's problems with the information, I will forward those issues to stakeholder A. If there's problems with the website, I will forward that to stakeholder B. You could put it in the service level agreement how you're going to bounce back those quagmire type issues back to the business. And that's usually the best way to handle it, because then the web design has trust issues because it's from 2004. Send that over to the engineering team. They can design and develop something nicer. The information is incorrect about the diet supplements. Send that back to the SME to correct the information. Or the information's too technical, that'll go back to the content writer stakeholder in the agreement. Doesn't have to be the SEO doing it all, and most of the time it probably shouldn't. And once you get back into that place where the SEO is doing SEO, I mean, that's kind of our happy place, right? That's where we all kind of, we find our jam. It's when you step too far outside of what you know and what you like doing that it starts getting miserable. But with that, we'll call that a show. Let me look at the comments here. Thane says, I like writing articles, but I do affiliate sites. So yeah, if you're a one person business, you're wearing all the hats. And so that's a great way to learn. But it definitely doesn't mean you could wear all the hats in a different type of business. Harshad on YouTube says, I usually look for subject matter experts and not SEO content writers when I need good content. Making it search engine optimized is my job. Yeah, that's the right attitude. In that case, you're looking to get the best information. You may have an issue if that information is too technical and you're not a good copywriter. You may be giving something that's too technical to the audience. That's usually where you need that content writer, is to come in and translate the geek speak back into English. And don't underestimate the value of that. It's not always needed, but when it is needed, it's very important. Let's see, another one. Sometimes because SEO takes a while to kick in, sometimes an SEO feels they should have value add by wearing these other hats. Yeah, but there are better ways to add value. I would look for SEO ways to add value. Do the goose egg SEO, create new pages, look at the names of things, look at page speed. There's always something you could be doing. If indexing is broken because of a Google update, you should be figuring out how to expand keyword reach on existing pages. If things of that nature, there's always something to work on. But yeah, that looks like all the comments. So any final thoughts, guys? Nope. Then thank you again. And next week we'll have episode 100. And thanks again, everyone. We'll see you then.